we may as well start by introducing them. Mike is already waved at you, and he's the fellow who is my executive assistant in Education Unlimited. I don't know how we get along without him. He does all the research. He does the post-secondary. He does the newsletters. He does the emails, and on and on and on. So we're very thankful to have him. And next to him, that's me. I'm Léo Gaumont, and I'm the Director of Education Unlimited. And then next to me, on my screen anyways, there's Tamara. You might want to put your screen down just a tiny bit because we're just getting you about from the bottom of the chin. There we go. And Tamara Western has been with us for probably the longest of them all. Well, not as long as my wife Faye and I, but she joined us a long time ago and has been facilitating for us for many, many years. And then on my screen beneath that, we have Isla, who's actually coming across as Jean. Now, Jean is a girl's name too, but that is actually Isla. And Isla has been facilitating for us for 4 or 5 years. How long? It just goes by so quickly. 5 years, right. Okay. And then beneath that, the fellow who insists on making us all jealous because he's in the mountains and the rest of us are sitting at home, although that is a virtual mountain, I have to say. That's Gary Weens. Gary Weens is, oh, I should go back to Tamara for a second. Tamara's also our resource manager. We try to give everyone their credit here. And Gary is also a facilitator with us, and he's been with us for 5, 6 years. I don't know. You remember Gary? A little bit longer than Isla, not much. 6, 7 years.
7 or 8.
Okay, who's counting? He's facilitator and he's also our video editor. So he's the guy that saved me from my faux pas last week. I don't know if any of you were there, but last week I thought I would make it nice and quiet for everyone. And when I muted myself, I knocked Gary out too because we were playing a video on my computer. So since he's the guy that had made the video in the first place, he took the old one out and spliced the new one in. I didn't check, but I'm sure you did that, right, Gary?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you can find that very good presentation that he did last week. And you want to repeat the line so everybody remembers or hears it again?
Mind what works for your family and disregard the rest.
There you go. And then we've got Crystal. Crystal, also an associate. She is one of our facilitators. And we're happy to have all those people here. We have only 3, 4 extra guests. So we have Sheena, and we have Angela, Diane, and Kay. All right, you want to introduce yourselves? There's enough tonight we can actually get to know who you are. So, go ahead. Oh, you're in mute. Okay, there we go.
Hello, my name's Kyle. It's my wife, Kirsty. We're from Alberta.
Where? We didn't get that.
Hinton, Alberta.
Hinton, okay. There's quite a group that grew out of Hinton this year. I am a little bit envious of Tamara up there, who's going there, because that's a great place to go. I don't know how come the boss can't get his pick of places, but sometimes you just end up having to do what you've got to do. Sheena, where are you from?
Hello. I live in Evansburg, Alberta.
Evansburg. Well, Tamara girl is probably the one that's going to be visiting you as well. So you get to see her firsthand. And we do have some people, they're basically, Nicolette, where are you from? Everybody's on mute, so if you're talking, we can't see or hear. All right. And we have, there we go. We have, who would that be? No, there's somebody there, I don't have a name yet. Diane, you want to share with us where you're from? Oh,
hi.
Hi,
yeah,
Diane.
just hi.
Diane.
Yeah, I've been around a long time. Yeah, from the Duke.
Right.
From the Duke.
And
yeah.
Diane has been, oh man, it's been a long, long time. Well, Diane ended up with 2 families, and
right.
We facilitated her first family. And once again, Tamara, I believe, has been your facilitator for the second family.
Yeah.
So Really nice to see you come on board.
Yeah.
Barbara, I can see you kind of, you're quite dark, but can you tell us where you're from?
I'm from Toronto, Canada.
Toronto, Canada. My goodness. Okay, well, welcome to this event that's become national. Obviously, it's all it takes is one person. So welcome. The other fellow that's sitting with the glasses that looks like he just swallowed a canary, that guy's Paul. Give us a smile, Paul. Paul, he's on really slow internet and he's from Saskatchewan, so he's made this national for a while. I don't know if he's actually tuned in yet, but Paul is our information technology manager. Angela, where are you from? Angela's not going to answer. Okay. Well, our topic today is moving from, transitioning from schooling to unschooling. I thought that'd be a very important topic to talk about today because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding here, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and the shuttering of schools across Canada, but we're particularly interested here in Alberta. Now, in Alberta, when that got shut down, they tried to extend the school into the home. Some of the school boards were more successful at that than others, but generally speaking, I think the vast majority of the people found it to be, well, they called it a joke. It really didn't work. Now, that shouldn't surprise us because school was actually designed for school. In other words, it's a system designed by the government to work in the system with their curriculum and their teachers following the government prescribed resources. So school works, well, it's designed to work in school. I know there's some argument as to whether that really works, but it works there. The problem is that it doesn't really work all that well when you bring school home. And that's what everybody ran into. So there became in Alberta here a new little model. We loved it because we have been Alberta's home or unschool provider for a very, very long time. And excuse me. And so, it was nice to see people coming in and normalizing us because we're the only outfit that actually talks clearly and plainly about unschooling. But the new motto was the new cool is unschool. I thought, oh, that sounds good. It even rhymes. The problem is most people misunderstood. They got so fed up with school. The COVID-19 exposed it in so many ways for what it was and for what it wasn't. And a lot of people decided, you know what, I'm done with school. So they just thought, as soon as we disconnect from school, from that system, we're unschooling. And that is not at all what unschooling is. Unschooling is an entirely different paradigm. Schooling is a paradigm. That's apples, and unschooling is oranges. Trying to make apples into oranges or vice versa is usually not a good idea. It usually isn't very successful. So what we thought we would do is that we would seriously discuss this evening how to move from a schooling scenario to an unschooling scenario. And I gave the opportunity to the staff to make that presentation this evening, and a couple of people suggested Nicolette. Now, Nicolette couldn't be with us this evening, but she's still with us because she presented or put together a nice video, and we will be playing that, and then we will have the staff put in additional comments, and then we will be open for questions. Just a little bit of an introduction. I think Nicolette does it herself, but I have been an unschooler for a very, very long time, and Nicolette as well. I actually have more experience than she has by the fact that I'm older, but she spent 3 years in a private unschooling school. In other words, it was actually kind of a daycare, but they employed an unschooling method, and she got some real fantastic hands-on experience there. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy listening to her this evening as she shares those experiences with you. So I'm going to go to screen sharing here, and then I will be playing Nicolette, and I will see you in about 20 minutes time.
Hi, my name is Nicolette Groeneveld, and I am a facilitator with Education Unlimited. For those of you who have not met me before, I'll just give a quick background so you know where I'm coming from. I taught in the public school system in the French immersion program at the junior high level for 10 years. And after that, when I became disillusioned with the public school system, I ran an unschooling democratic school for 6.5 years. And basically that was a campus where students ages 4 through 19 came together every day to unschool. After that, I worked as a facilitator for Education Unlimited for quite a few years. And then I've been home educating my own daughter for 14 years, and now I'm back working with Education Unlimited as a facilitator. So because of my unique experience with working with unschooling kids, I have experienced a lot of transitions from schooling to unschooling. And so I'm happy to talk to you tonight about my experiences with that. So because families unschool in so many different ways, because there are so many different ways to approach it, I'm just going to briefly talk about families who unschool using curriculum, and then I'm going to talk about families who choose to unschool without using curriculum. So as far as transitions from school to unschooling with curriculum, the first thing I would like to recommend to families is don't rush into buying books and workbooks and programs and things. There's a lot of material out there, a lot of different approaches, a lot of different material you can get. But before you even start looking into that, I would highly recommend that you stop and think about what you actually think your children need to know and what skills you believe your children need to have moving forward to become successful adults. So if you think about your own schooling experience, stop and think about how much of what you learn in school you actually remember and how much of it you use on a day-to-day basis. And when you think about that and then you start thinking about curriculum, kind of put the two together and say, okay, so based on my experiences and based on what's available out there, what do I really believe my children need to know and what skills do they need to have? And then from there, you can buy your curriculum and you can get into whatever programs you want to get into. Once you start doing your curricular program with your children, another thing that I would highly recommend is that you really be aware of your children and especially their attention span and how things are going with them in your schooling at home process or your kind of learning curriculum process. So if your children start getting fidgety, if they start losing focus, if their eyes glaze over, if their faces go blank, it means that they're not with you anymore, and it's probably a really good time to change activities or move on to something new, or just give them a break so they can run around or have a snack or something. Especially younger kids, their attention span is shorter, and so it's really important when you're going from school to being at home and doing curriculum, just to really tune into your children and make sure that their needs are being met as much as you're wanting them to work with you so that you can feel like what you're wanting them to get done is getting done. If things go a little bit more sideways and you're actually getting really stressed out with your kids and you're maybe starting to get into squabbles or fights, then it's really time to reevaluate what you're doing, maybe reconsider the program you're using or reconsider what you're asking your children to learn. It might not really be at their level yet, they might not be understanding it, it might just need a totally different approach to things. Really important when you're transitioning from school to homeschooling with curriculum to just make sure that things are working for everybody and to make sure that you're in tune enough with your children to know when it's not working for them or when they need a break or they need a snack or whatever. Just checking my notes here to keep myself on track. So yeah, that's really kind of as much as I have to say about transitioning from school to home with curriculum. If I think of anything else along the way, I'll bring it up. But to move on to transitioning from schooling to unschooling without curriculum, the first thing I actually want to talk about is the fact that quite often the transition here is more a matter of the parents adjusting than the children. So of course, as parents, most of us went through the public school system, and our conditioning tells us that learning happens through books and workbooks and tests and drills and memorizing, etc. So when you're bringing your children home to unschool, sometimes it's actually the parents who have to let go of school more than the children. So if you need to take time to kind of reconsider your own schooling and how that was for you, and then think about some more about what you believe learning is and how it should work, feel free to take that time. And again, don't rush into things. Don't feel like there's all kinds of pressure on you and you have to start accomplishing anything right away. Of course, most people, if they really stop to think about it, they realize that learning happens most naturally when people are interested in what they're learning, and when they have a need for what they're learning. So I know for myself as an adult, most of the things that I learned and retained have been because something piqued my interest. And so I pursued it and learned more about it and was really excited about what I was learning. And so of course that was because I was interested in something and pursued it. Other times, for example, people might need to learn a new skill for their job, or they might need to gather a bunch of information for something they're working on in a project or something. And that falls more in the category of learning something because you need it. You might not necessarily be interested in it, but you'll still push yourself to learn it. And I've seen a lot of unschoolers in exactly that same situation, where especially older unschoolers, that they understand they need something, and even if they're not super interested in it, they will go ahead and push themselves to learn it. And for the rest, when children are interested in things, most of the time they'll gobble up information, and so you can pretty much just support them in whatever they're interested in, and they will do fantastic learning even all on their own. So again, that transition for parents is just really something that you need to give yourself time for. And if sometimes you start feeling a little crazy because you feel like you're not doing what, maybe you're thinking that the kids are falling behind or something like that, just kind of reconsider what unschooling is and what natural learning is, and go back to why you made the decision to unschool without curriculum, and talk to people who are doing the same thing, and it'll probably help to settle you again. Another thing I wanted to talk about as far as parents is that it's really valuable actually in unschooling to wrap your head around the concept that doing nothing can be really valuable. So in our society, of course, being really productive and accomplishing things is highly valued, but some of the greatest creativity, some of the best ideas bubble up when people are doing nothing, when they're just sitting quietly, or they're just maybe outside kind of sitting on a chair looking around at nature, or just going for a walk, or doing something where their mind is a little quieter. And it's the same thing for children. Some of their best ideas and some of the greatest things they come up with happen when they're just kind of doing nothing. They're just kind of hanging out or hanging around, and it's actually a really healthy thing. So as parents, as you're getting used to unschooling without curriculum, also see about getting comfortable with doing nothing and allowing your children to do the same. Having talked about the parents, let's talk about the kids. So a lot of children who come home from school are simply very happy to be out of school and are just really looking forward to being able to do the things they like to do. And a lot of, especially younger children, already have tons of things that they're interested in and tons of things that they like to do. And so they're just going to go ahead and fly into all those things, and you really don't need to worry too much about them. Your biggest role with them usually is simply to support the things that they're interested in and help them find resources or whatever they need to pursue their interest. You might also have this situation where you have a child who struggled in school, maybe was given different labels, learning disabled labels, or dyslexia, or delayed speech, that kind of thing. A lot of times when those children are first coming home from school, they just need time to rest and kind of recuperate and regroup and gain their confidence and their self-esteem back. So a lot of times it can be really valuable with them just really to let them do their own thing, let them pursue the things that they're interested in a really relaxed way without any kinds of pressures or expectations, and just slowly give them time to start rebuilding their confidence and start thinking about the things that they're interested in and the things that they like to do, and just supporting them in that so they can start feeling a little bit better about themselves again, knowing they're not being compared to anybody anymore. There are no expectations on them that are difficult for them to meet simply because they're individuals and they didn't fit into the box that school was trying to fit them into. So just being compassionate with them and understanding that they did struggle at school, and you don't want them to have those same struggles at home. So just giving them the time and the space just to be okay with themselves again. When it comes to younger children, they usually don't have many problems transitioning from school to unschooling. And the one thing that I would say with younger children is just really let them play a lot. Play is a brilliant learning tool, and it also allows children to move a lot. And children were built both to move and to play. That's factory installed in children, playing and moving. And that's why, in my opinion, schooling can be so detrimental to children, because even just for their physical development, sitting in a desk all day is just not healthy. And children, sitting in a desk for a number of hours and being asked to focus, that's just not how children are built. So don't be afraid just to let your children play, let them run around, let them move a lot. They might get hungry or need to eat more too. So just let them be kids, and you will see how much they learn and how many things they're interested in and how many questions they're asking you, just by being allowed just to be their natural childlike selves. Moving away from the child spectrum over into preteens and teenagers, this is where you may encounter a bit more challenge. What I found in the many years that I worked with teenagers and preteens who came from schooling to unschooling, what I saw is many of them actually went through a pretty difficult roller coaster ride. So of course, when they first came into unschooling, they were excited, they were elated, they were almost euphoric because nobody was telling them what to do, and they could eat whenever they wanted, and they didn't have to do testing and all the things that they didn't like in school. So they were super happy and just thought life was fantastic, and kind of they won the lottery, the education lottery, that is. And then what I always saw happen was that a lot of these kids would become bored. So the elation would kind of start to dwindle off, and then these teens would kind of not know what to do with themselves. For so long, their lives were dictated and scheduled and structured by the outside world, and now suddenly they were in a place where they had to figure out for themselves what they wanted to do and what they wanted to pursue and what was interesting to them, and they just didn't know. So many of them, because they spent so much time in school doing work, and then they came home and they had to do homework, and then sometimes they tried to squeeze in certain activities they were maybe interested in, it didn't leave a lot of time for them to really connect with themselves and really be clear about what they were interested in and what they loved and what they wanted to pursue. And so a lot of these kids would end up getting really bored, and they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. And sometimes they even got downright depressed, and their parents would actually get concerned about them. And many well-meaning parents would then start making suggestions of like, well, why don't you try this? Or you used to really like that. And although that might pick somebody up for a little bit, in the end, those teenagers were not served by that. They were a lot better served by the parents who said, I know this is really hard. You're going to get through this. Like I said, a lot of them, they had their lives dictated and organized for them from the outside for so long. And so it takes time to get back in touch with yourself and to figure out what you want to do and what's interesting to you and kind of what future you see yourself moving towards. And so those children or those teens most of the time just kind of needed that encouragement and that support from their parents and from their surroundings to say, you're going to be okay. You're going to get through this. Just stick it out. And so most of the time it is what happens. So actually all the time it is what happens. So these teenagers, they get through the boredom stage, they would kind of start exploring things here and there and just slowly start looking into things and kind of poking their nose into things. And then eventually they would get on a happier path where they were saying, yeah, actually, I really like this and I want to look into this more. Or they would have several things on the go, and then suddenly we would have really happy teenagers in front of us again. The one thing I just want to point out with this whole process that can really kind of throw a screw into things is technology. So when youth are bored, quite often if they have easy access to technology, they will just default there because it's easy entertainment, it passes the time, it gives them something to do. And when that technology is more limited or they don't have access to it at all, that's when they actually have to sit in their boredom and sit with themselves and move through the process. So it's important for families to decide what their values are around technology, to decide if they feel limitations or restrictions are required around technology. I know my daughter has gone through various different things around technology. I started with her with the unschooling idea that I would give her unlimited access, and then eventually she decided for herself that it wasn't serving her, and so she decided herself when she was 8 years old that she would only watch technology for an hour and a half every day or be on technology. And that was a real turning point for us because it helped me to realize that actually just letting her be on technology all the time was not in line with my own values. And so at the same time, I was really, really thrilled that my daughter made the decision herself to limit the technology, because rather than it being something that I imposed on her, she realized the value herself of not being on technology all the time. And that has carried forward now, and she's 14 and she still limits herself. So technology is something that I do, even though, you know, you're unschooling, it doesn't mean that you're non-parenting or you're not having any restrictions or boundaries around things. And especially technology can be a little tricky because it is such an easy default and it can be so entertaining all the time. And sometimes it can be valuable for children to be doing other things. And it's just really something to make agreements around in your family on your own. So that having been said, I've run through the kids who are just happy to be home, the little children who just like to play and run around, and then the children who had struggled in school and just need a little bit of time to reconnect with themselves and regain their confidence. And then usually the preteens and teens who kind of go through that roller coaster from happiness to boredom to finding themselves again and moving forward. And so those are pretty much the key transitions that I've seen. And then I just wanted to address a couple of other things around transitioning from school to unschooling. And one of them is around having routines. So some families think that if you're unschooling, you just kind of throw everything to the wind, but that's not necessarily true. It can be very healthy for families to have routines. Some families function really well with them. Some families are fine without them, but it's just something for you to talk about within your own family and say, and just kind of decide, you know, do we need routines in order to keep a sane household, or are we good without them? And just another little thing to think about. Another thing, of course, as you transition from unschooling or from schooling to unschooling is time with friends. So a lot of kids, when you ask them why they want to be in school, they say, well, because that's where my friends are. They don't really like anything else about school, but they want to be with their friends. And it's no different when they're unschooling. They need that social time. Most of them anyway. Most kids really enjoy their time with their friends. And so, of course, with COVID, it's a little bit more complicated and a little more difficult to get friends and kids together, but it is something that remains important and something that as parents, we do need to make sure those social needs are met. One final thing I wanted to talk about as far as the transition to unschooling is you may run into, it's very possible that you'll run into friends and family who don't understand what you're doing and who start asking you all kinds of questions about it and throwing all kinds of doubts at you and that kind of thing. What I've found is that it's generally not very productive to debate or discuss or argue with them. Usually it's easier if you just agree to disagree and then just let time show these doubting people that unschooling really can be amazing. So in my own experience, I've known quite a few people who were really doubting the whole unschooling thing, and they're completely converted now because of what they've seen in the unschooling children. So if you find that people are throwing questions at you that are making you doubt your decision or making you wonder if it was the right thing to pull your children out of school, connect with your facilitator or connect with other people who are unschooling or people who do understand what you're doing, who can restore your confidence, because undoubtedly it's not a decision you made lightly. And so to have people making you question it after the fact can be really unsettling. So just realign with people who understand what you're doing and who are going to support you in what you're doing and help you to feel confident and encouraged. My experience, of course, with so many unschoolers, I absolutely know in my being, it's like without a shadow of a doubt, I know that unschooling is a beautiful and brilliant way to educate children. I know so many unschoolers who are now adults who are amazing adults and perfectly functional, fantastic people. And so any of the people in your life who are questioning you or doubting you, just let time do its thing and you do your thing. I'm celebrating you. I think it's a great decision you've made, and I know that you've got your children's best interests at heart, and it's going to be a learning process for everybody, and it's going to be fantastic. And all these people who doubt you, in the end, they're going to be super, super impressed with your children. So don't worry about that part of things. So that's all I have to say about this topic. I hope it's been a little bit helpful, and any other questions you have will be answered by Léo and the rest of the Education Unlimited facilitators. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Well, we're back. Wasn't that a fantastic presentation? Wow. I don't know how many, it's not often that after a presentation, I don't have a whole lot to add, but I can say I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I did neglect to point out that Isla, who's going to wave again, she is one of two people who are our Facebook group administrators. And that is, we have one, if I'm correct, help me if or correct me if I'm wrong, it's called the Unschooling Families of Education Unlimited. And you're free to join that Facebook group. I think at this juncture in time, it is limited to families that are members of the Education Unlimited organization as family member families. Am I correct, Isla, or is it open to anyone?
I think it's open to everyone.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good. Well, while you've got the floor, Isla, you can add some stuff to this, I'm sure. So why don't you share with us some of your thoughts?
Well, I can't add too much. That's really good. I agree that unschooling is more of a mindset and a philosophy more than it is an educational method, a teaching method. And I agree with Nicolette that it's it's the parents that usually have the problem in the unschooling, not necessarily, like the little kids for sure, just buy into it right away. And because we've been schooled and we've gone to school and done all that, we have to de-school ourselves. And that is the greatest thing. And just tonight, just before this meeting started, my husband, Gene, was scooching out the door. And I said, hey, tonight the topic is transitioning from school to unschooling. What would be your advice? What would you want me to say on your behalf? And he said, the road between the two destinations, school and unschooling, is always under construction. And so I agree that it's a process. It's a process to get from a school mindset to an unschool mindset. It's undulating, it's circuitous, and it's sometimes back and forth. It's sometimes we make progress and then we step back, and we make progress and we step back. And I have been making, like all the facilitators, a lot of phone calls to the families that are starting this journey, and many people are in a panic. And I want to say, be gracious, be kind to yourself. You process, it's a journey. You don't have to arrive tomorrow. You don't have to arrive this week. You don't even have to arrive this year. As long as we're making progress and we're making steps, and we keep first things first. And in my opinion, first things first for me, it's relationship. And so you're building family relationships, and you're encouraging your children to build relationships one with another. And like Nicolette said, when the relationship starts to get tricky and parents and children are fighting or bickering, or there's tears and frustration, there's something wrong. And that is a serious red flag. And seriously pay attention to that, because it's the relationship that is first. And another, just a little tidbit, is that there is no expiry date on education. So we are always learning, and we will always learn. And I hear parents say, well, I want to prepare my children for every eventuality. And so I want to make sure that they've got everything they need by the time they're 18, and that their school is well-rounded. And I'm like, that doesn't exist. Well-rounded schooling doesn't exist. And please, I just pray that when your 18-year-old leaves your home, that they do not know everything they need for the rest of their life. I really pray that. I'm looking here, all of you have been 18. Some of you have had an 18-year-old. Some of you know an 18-year-old. And please, dear God, let that not be the end of their learning. We really want them to be starting their learning journey at 18. So our job is to building this relationship with them and setting them up for success, and that they know how to learn, and that they're teachable, and that they can go out and learn everything that they need to learn, and continue to learn everything that they need to know. So yeah, so there's a few myths I think that we can just put aside. But yeah, I don't really have too much to add, because Nicolette has done a super great job there.
Thank you, Isla. Yeah, that's for sure. You know, some of us have turned 18 several times and still learning. So what the interesting thing about unschooling is that, you know, people ask me sometimes to define it. And I say, well, it's kind of simple. There's actually three possible definitions. One is take a look at what school does and simply don't do that. That's one way to define it. The other one is take a look at what school fails to do and make sure you do that, because that's the reason you pulled them out of school in the first place. If it didn't work in school, and a lot of you decided that that was the case, bringing them home doesn't change anything, especially if you bring the school home with them. The third definition that I have for unschooling is just be a family. Just grow and learn, enjoy each other. I tell moms sometimes that one day on the tractor or in the truck with dad is probably worth more than 2 weeks worth of little exercises in a book, where they demonstrate clearly how intelligent they are and how much they love their mother. But at the end of the day, after they've done their little test or whatever, you give them that same test in 2-3 days time, and a lot of that stuff has been forgotten already, because there is no practical application. You've got to consider that God created us all learning, each and every one of us. And we're programmed to learn what we need to learn, to do what we have to do when we need to do it. So when people are, you know, the upper, let's say, high school level students, parents are asking, you know, should I be doing algebra? I said, well, was the child having trouble with it? Yeah, lots. Forget it. So then they get concerned. My reason to say forget it is, if God did not put math ability into them, you will not be putting math ability into them. Okay? They're already made. You're not making anything out of them. You're just developing what's already been created. Okay? There's unschooling. But at the same time, if indeed it turns out that they find some kind of thing that they want to do where that algebra is required, well, let me tell you how quick they will pick it up and they're off and running. So why are we trying to force all the children of the province to be engineers and journalists and scientists and anything other that there is? The children have gifts and talents and abilities. And as Nicolette alluded, and Nyla as well, that they're so unique. There's no such thing as that program, that standard or that well-rounded program. Well-rounded is simply something that works for the child. And we end up giving them, as parents, the most important gift of all. And schools fail here completely. And that is, by the time you're done unschooling your children, they are fully comfortable in their own skins. they're familiar with themselves. They're familiar with their weaknesses and their strengths and their likes and their abilities. And I find that the home education, generally speaking, whether you're home educating or unschooling, there are some 4 steps I'll explain in a minute. But our children get to college and they do exceptionally well, and there's rarely ever a dropout. And the reason is because the children are comfortable enough to know exactly what they want, and they're going to college because they need that ticket or that diploma or that certificate or that degree in order to be able to do what they already know that they want to do. So very few of the home educated students or students who are educated at home actually get confused like they do in school, where they tell them that they can be anything they want to be, which is only half true. They can be anything they want to be in keeping with the gifts and the talents that they have, nothing more. So really, we give them that chance. Now, I should explain the 4 steps. I see 4 different categories of learning, and it's not, they're not boxes. It's kind of a transition. There's the school paradigm, and there's the other extreme, and I don't want to use extreme, but the other end where we just simply don't do school, and that's unschool. There's, generally speaking, for brand new families, 2 steps between school and unschool. Those transitional steps are, and you know, I think everyone so far, and there'll be more added in a minute here, but when you come from the school, you bring those children home, you bring school with you. If that's all you've experienced, that's all you understand, that's all you've been exposed to, that's it. So Nicolette alluded to the fact that the whole process is far more a learning process for the parents than it is for the children. And I have to say, she just defined our job description. As facilitators, we go out there and do everything we can to help the parents understand that many of the things that they've adopted as the only way to educate children aren't necessarily the best way to educate children. And so we'll help you to get past that. For me, as a facilitator, the most fearful words I hear is when somebody tells me, "Oh, I'm a teacher, you know," and those are the first 2, 3 words you hear. Now you know you've got a gigantic job on your, you know, to do here, because the undoing of that school mentality is very difficult. And for those people, not only have they had 12 years of indoctrination, but an additional 4 years at the college level of indoctrination. And it takes a while for them to get their heads around that. So now we've gone from school and we bring it home and we get to homeschool. We start to realize, why are we doing this? And that's everybody. When my wife and I started home educating a very long time ago, the first October rolled around, or the end of October, we were thinking, well, maybe it was time to do a report card. Now we're both teachers, and we're thinking we should be, putting together report cards, until we asked ourselves, who in the world were we reporting to? So that's how hung up you can get on some of these school, ideological thinking. So seriously, the part that I liked the best, actually, of home educating was the parent-teacher conferences. I would take my wife into the bedroom, and I was the parent, she was the teacher, and we would conference. That was the best part of home educating, I thought. So anyways, so then we went from school to homeschooling, and then that starts to unravel and becomes more of a home education. So I would say the vast majority of the people that are associated with us are somewhere between, home education and unschooling. And home education just simply is, if you want me also to define, the school has a set curriculum. And so when you come home and you have a set curriculum, and we do suggest that for beginners, just to do the transition. There's some things like ACE or CLE or Alpha Omega or ABECA or Bob Jones. They basically got all the grades and all the subjects and all the grades, and people bring that home. And even though it's not the same program that you're doing in school, it's still based on a school ideology. Eventually, this starts to get replaced with this for math and this for English. And, we decided to just go for a vacation for social and so on. As it becomes more, if you will, it sounds loosey, but it's not. It becomes freer. it becomes more home education. And when it gets to the point where truly we're the parents who are still in control and still the parents are actually observing the children and having the children in many ways direct the learning simply on the basis of their immediate interests and abilities. All right, I've added a few more pieces, so everyone else can too. So I've got Tamara there. Do you have something to add, Tamara? You got to demute or unmute.
Yeah,
There we
there. I think I'm on my iPad, so first time. Yeah, I'd like to just echo what Isla and Nicolette said. One of the things I like to really remind my parents is that it actually starts with you. So you set the tone for the day. They can feel the tension in the home if you are upset, if you are unsettled, if you are uncertain, if you're filled with doubts and fears. So I really like to tell my parents to spend some time in that reflection mode and to just set the tone for those children for the day, and everything moves more freely from a place of peace and assurance and knowing that you're going to have a fantastic day together for sure with your learning and your discovery process.
Okay. How about you, Crystal? Do you want to add something to that? Caught you playing cards or something, didn't I? You're on mute still.
I'm not playing cards.
Okay. You're not playing solitaire?
Sudoku. No. No, I don't have a lot to add, just like everybody else. You said something that triggered something in me, Leo. You talked about observing the children, and I think that we just automatically do this. When our child is ready for something, then we teach it to them. When our children are born, we teach them how to nurse. You know, when our son or daughter is ready to be potty trained, we teach them potty training. When they're ready to learn their colors, we teach them their colors. And so it's just a flow of life. And that's kind of how I look at unschooling. So that's all I have.
As a high school teacher, I was working in a high school that somehow never actually understood the concept of a 5-day week. So what they did is they actually had 6 periods in the 5-day week, which meant that one day I would have the same class for 2 times. And I felt, even though I really enjoyed what I was doing, I felt that 2 periods of biology 30 in succession was cruel and unusual punishment. So what I would do is I would open it up and I would say, since biology is a study of life, why don't we just ask questions? You can ask me any question about anything. I'm too old to embarrass. Although I discovered I could actually get embarrassed. Some of those questions were quite something. But then they would ask the question. And the rule was, of course, I knew that just by age, by education and everything else, I probably had the answer. Occasionally they'd stop me. But the rule was if I didn't have an answer, they would have to go and research that answer. Well, needless to say, some did, very few. I would go research the answer because I got stumped. But anyways, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that the students absolutely loved that question period. I could hardly stop it. And even though I was teaching the advanced academics, and so there was a lot more required of them, they would beg me and say, look, where do we have to be by the end of the day? We'll trade this, we'll do the work at home. And so I'd say, fine. And more than once, it would be not 10 minutes, but the entire period. I had students coming up to me, hugging me, shaking my hand, and I don't know how many times I heard, that's the best class I have ever had in my life. Why? Why was that the best class they ever had in their life? Because they had questions for which they got answers. That's the practical nature of education. Those are the things they remembered. So I need to tell you now, fast forward many years later, I ran into a former Biology 30 AC student, and my dad was there. I asked him what kind of a teacher I was. So he responded in this way. He said, he answered a few things for my dad. And then he looked at me and he said, I know you were an awesome biology teacher. Of course, I knew that already. He didn't have to tell me that. I heard it many times. But listen to what he said next. But I have to admit, he said, I think I've forgotten all the biology that you taught me. But he said, those things that you taught me about life during question period, I want you to know, Mr. Gaumont, I hear your voice every day. Now, folks, there is no higher compliment than that one. So let me ask you as parents, what do you want to teach your children about? Life. They're not going to be coming back and hugging you because you really did such a fantastic job with Shakespeare or Chaucer, or you were such a good explainer of math, or the science was fun. They're going to come back and talk about the goofs. That's the first thing children talk about, all your errors. And they're going to talk about that fun activity and this fun activity. And you remember this and you remember that. And if you listen, they're telling you the times when they really, really learned something. One more thing in application to that, and again, it's more or less the same story. I did a presentation in Montreal on portfolios. That's got to be about 15, 20 years ago. And I had to do it in French and in English. I'm bilingual, so I struggled a bit in my French. I have to admit, I don't get to talk French as near as often as English, obviously. But there was a lady there who, and they were also very cosmopolitan and helpful. It wasn't, you know, every time I made a mistake, they were all correcting me and discussing about the right way to do it. It was a really good experience. One lady was there in the French, and then she stayed on for the English version of the same presentation. And she came to me and informed me of the fact that she'd been home educating for about 20 years, and she had been to dozens and dozens and dozens of these types of presentations. But she said, I have to say, this was the absolute best presentation I've ever heard. Of course, I'm bragging again, right? No, no, no. Listen, what I did is I asked her, really, why would you say that? And here's her words, because this is something I could take home and use. This was practical. So we can go in all kinds of highfalutin stuff and talk big words, left brain, right brain, no brain, or whatever. But the reality is that what matters is that we teach those children where they're at and just have them explore themselves and their capabilities. And in the end, the lessons that they learn are the lessons that they've taught themselves. Incidentally, that was a secret for my success in high school. I hate to admit this, don't tell anybody. I didn't teach them anything. I provided them the opportunity to learn what they had to learn in order to do what they had to do, which was to beat the test. And they did very well at it because they did it themselves. So again, the children were in control. The students that I had were in control, sort of. I was still the guy that had to answer for them. I was still the parent, you know, quasi-parent in the school setting. Your children do the same. They basically are the ones that are kind of leading the way, and you're still the parent. And hey, well, hey, how about this? And suggest that. There's all kinds of things that you can actually do there to encourage and to cultivate what's already there. All right, I don't want to miss Gary. Do you have something to add to that, Gary? He's still in the mountains.
I think it's been well said. I mean, maybe just to echo the sense of it's a journey and it's life, and the sense of under construction, I don't think can be overemphasized. It's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike, I don't want to leave you out. Do you have something to add?
No, I don't actually.
Okay, Mike is just going to do some more research and then he'll add then later. Folks, we are more than happy to answer your questions. I think we've used up the whole hour, but I am going to stretch it a bit. Should you have any questions, there's two ways to do it. You can, there's so few of you that aren't educational limited staff this evening, you can just jump in and ask the question, or, excuse me, you can chat the question here. I did find out that Angela is from Barnwell, and so I think I know who you've been talking to. We have a very good friend there, and an up and coming facilitator, I believe. So Sheena said hello to Angela, and that's all we got so far. So do we have any questions at all regarding home education, or did we do such a fabulous job? You have no questions. Going once? Yes, ma'am. Oh, well, you're very welcome. Angela said we did a fantastic job or fabulous job, and she thanked us. And I think that's Sheena. Are you gonna ask the question, Sheena? Go ahead.
I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say that you've really helped me to clarify what unschooling is, right? Like, and I had a pretty good idea, I thought, but I was hesitant. I was like, I know I want to teach my children in a way that's going to be fun and long lasting, and not just sitting at the table pounding information into their heads. And like you said, when people hear unschooling, they're like, oh, you're just going to let your kids do whatever you want and never tell them no. It's like, that's pretty sure that's not what unschooling is. We're going to learn what they want to learn, and we're going to do it in a way that they want to do it, rather than in the way that they do it at school. So it's just, it was very helpful in just solidifying in my mind, that this is the right path for our family. So that's all.
I even goes one step further in saying it, and again, you notice that none of us have discouraged the use of curriculum. But what I do suggest to the parents is, if you really want a winner, have the children sit down with you and choose the curriculum with you. Then when they're saying, well, I don't really want to do that, said, hey, it was just as much your idea. So it's kind of a bargaining chip. But really, in the end, you also find out that you're sitting there, you're thinking, oh, they should do the grade 4 science course. And they're looking at the grade 6 science course and going, oh, well, that looks really, really interesting. Well, forget the grade 4 science course. Do the grade 6 one. It doesn't matter, okay? Because now they're interested in it. And if it's their idea, well, it's a good one. It can also be a bad idea, and that is just as much a learning experience, maybe better even, than a good idea. I was just writing a blog today where I was thanking the world for mistakes. I was just simply saying that error has been my lifelong friend, because it's provided me with opportunity to fix a problem. And so children that have that attitude are going to do very, very well, no doubt. All right. Any other questions here? If you are interested, I have been talking and advancing and advocating for unschooling for many, 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 many years. And there's a blog series, I believe, on unschooling. And with all the blogs that we have out there, I'm sure we probably talk about it almost every time. There's lots of information out there. I think there's some articles as well. So do use the website. Those of you who are registered with us, there's just tons of tools there. Most of the tools are actually available to the whole world. And parents, of course, do have some extra privileges, because they are, after all, part of the organization, part of the family of families. And when you go to My EU, there'll be some things there to help you as well. Any other final comments this evening? Okay. Mike and Gary are probably going to be getting to work here in the next little while, and that video that we have recorded this evening will be made available on our YouTube channel sometime in the early next week, I think, usually the way it works out. So to all of you who joined, especially to all the staff members, we stacked the deck tonight. Thank you. That's very encouraging. So thank you all for showing up. And for our special guest, thank you as well. And may God bless you, and may you have a fantastic year of unschooling. Good night.